From the Gulf States Newsroom, this is the Gulf States Gumbo, your weekly serving of stories from Alabama, Mississippi, and Louisiana. I'm sports and cultural reporter Joseph King, chopping it up this week. On today's show, the Alabama Black Belt received national attention for its long-standing sanitation issues for residents. And as people look for solutions, some groups are taking it upon themselves to apply for funding to help address sewage needs.
With the septic systems, they will have to have maintenance, and then they will have to be pumped. So we are looking down the line to have jobs created for the local people.
We also find out what Louisiana is doing with empty homeless encampments in New Orleans with the Super Bowl around the corner.
Had tents all around the church, all down the street from the church, across the street, all around the corner. Now you can't even find a tent.
That's all coming up on the Gulf States Gumbo. Poor sanitation is a long-standing issue in the Gulf South, especially in Alabama's Black Belt, where the soil is a problem for traditional septic systems. The state's previous rules for funding water infrastructure made it difficult for residents to fix sanitation issues themselves. Gulf States Newsroom reporter Danny MacArthur has been reporting on this issue for a few years and joins me now to discuss what residents are facing and the solutions in place to resolve them. Hey, Danny, thanks for being here.
Thanks for having me.
So, Danny, can you tell me how your reporting on this began?
Yeah, it's been a story that's been in development for years for me. It first hit my radar in early 2023 when a couple of nonprofits filed a legal complaint against the Alabama Department of Environmental Management. In that earlier story, I talked about how Alabama had a revolving fund for improving water infrastructure across the state, but only public bodies like towns or county boards can apply for it. I talked with Catherine Coleman Flowers, a longtime advocate around sanitation. She said that the state's actions were negatively impacting rural, majority Black communities like Lowndes County.
We're hoping that at some point in this state, some of the funds, they come through the State Revolving Loan Fund or the Clean Water Act, that some of those funds will be made available to homeowners to fix failing systems or to put in place septic systems in each of the 67 counties where they're failing.
So why is it so difficult to maintain proper sanitation in parts of Alabama?
Well, the Black Belt has rich clay soil. It's good for things like growing crops, but it's a problem for septic systems because the soil isn't absorbent. The way one expert described it, the clay content doesn't work well because when it gets wet, it expands. That means wastewater doesn't have anywhere to go, so it either gets backed up or comes to the surface.
And as you mentioned, this is a systemic issue for residents in Alabama. Who is at the forefront of making things better for communities in need of proper sanitation?
I've been talking to a patchwork of people who are hoping to help fix the issue. One of those women is Sherry Bradley, who's not a native of Lowndes County, but has been aware of its sanitation issues since her previous time with the Alabama Department of Public Health.
Y'all in the country.
Sherry Bradley gets out of her car and stands in one homeowner's yard in Lowndes County, Alabama. She's here with another nonprofit group from California to visit two sites, both showing opposite sides of the sewage issues that many in the county face.
Mosquitoes ain't started biting yet.
We're standing beside a manufactured home that has a pipe leading out to the homeowner's yard.
This is a typical straight pipe.
It dumps sewage directly on the ground.
A straight pipe results when a person cannot afford the system.
The Black Belt is known for its rich soil, but it's a problem for most traditional sewage systems. And ones that will work with the Black Belt soil can cost at least $28,000, she says, which is money many in this region don't have. That's where organizations like Bradley's come in. Several years ago, Bradley, alongside Perman Hardy, formed a wastewater program to tackle the issue. In Bradley's car, she tells me that they apply for government funding that can afford septic systems for folks.
We've been blessed enough to get grant after grant after grant.
That includes millions of dollars from places like the United States Department of Agriculture and the American Rescue Plan Act. So far, they've helped over 100 households, and Bradley is hopeful they'll be able to help even more. Last year, the Environmental Protection Agency gave the group and its partners more than $14 million to help treat 350 homes in Hale, Lowndes, and Wilcox counties. Perman Hardy grew up in Lowndes County, where, according to census data, thousands face similar sanitation issues.
And I'm quite sure issues like this is all over the United States, but in the rural part, you'll find it more frequently than you would probably in other areas that are not as in the rural part of the Black Belt.
Hardy says building trust has been important for the work they're doing.
And once you build that trust, when you need something and you telling people change is about to happen, they receive it better because you done built that relationship.
In the meantime, they're celebrating the little victories, like the now functioning system they installed for one older woman living in Lowndes County. After driving for a while, we arrive at a red bricked house. We get out of the car and go behind it, where two men are waiting for us to arrive.
So what I want you to do is follow this gentleman and this gentleman, and they're gonna show you the results of that reovation system on top of the septic tank system.
One of those men is Stephen Miller. He is with Reovation, a company working with Bradley and Hardy to come up with sewage solutions for on-site wastewater treatment challenges. He stands beside what looks like a small black box located above ground. Next to it are two covered holes. That's the sound of the Reovation system they installed in action. That black box is an air pump designed to create oxygen-rich conditions. The idea is to create an environment for microorganisms to grow that help treat the water.
We just give them the right environment with the oxygen and then the structure for them to populate on, and they eat all of the waste.
The result is something that isn't potable, meaning you can't drink it, but it does take away the smell and gets it clear. Addressing residential wastewater systems is just one example of ways groups are approaching fixing the issue. Other solutions include upgrading and expanding the systems of existing municipalities with sewers and identifying clusters of homes that could share a sewage system. The goal is to help homes across central Alabama get proper sanitation.
You're listening to the Gulf States Gumbo. I'm Joseph King, talking to environmental justice reporter Danny MacArthur. We just heard from a couple groups in central Alabama that are working to create a path forward for residents dealing with sanitation issues in the region. Danny, who else did you talk to?
I've also talked with other groups that are working to help rural communities dealing with sanitation, like the Center for Rural Enterprise and Environmental Justice. They're led by Catherine Coleman Flowers, who I mentioned earlier. There's also the Lowndes County Unincorporated Wastewater Program, which is made up of Lowndes County residents appointed by the Lowndes County Commission. The president is Carmelita Arnold. She says something they hope to focus on in the future is how to maintain those septic systems once they are up and running.
With the septic systems, they will have to have maintenance, and then they will have to be pumped. So we are looking down the line to have jobs created for the local people that where they can take care of the septic system.
And are there possibly any obstacles this community will face under a new administration in the White House?
So something that I'll be following is how President Trump has decided to go after DEI initiatives. According to his administration, that includes environmental justice funding. I wonder how that will trickle down to communities like this. In this story, I mentioned how there was $14 million that advocates received that came from climate and environmental justice funding. So if Trump is going to eliminate that funding, that could jeopardize future projects like this. But it's a quickly developing story.
And that was our environmental justice reporter, Danny MacArthur. Danny, thanks for coming on.
Thank you.
The Gulf States Newsroom is a team of journalists working with NPR and local public media stations in Alabama, Mississippi, and Louisiana to cover the issues that matter to you. Email us, connect@gulfstatesnewsroom.org.
Former homeless encampments around New Orleans Superdome are empty. This comes after Louisiana Governor Jeff Landry declared a state of emergency earlier this month to move residents away from the site for the upcoming Super Bowl. Stephan Bisaha of the Gulf States Newsroom has more.
One encampment used to be under the city's Pontchartrain Expressway overpass, just a short walk from the Superdome.
It must have been probably about 400 people before these people started taking them away.
Corey Johnson lives near the former encampment.
Had tents all around the church, all down the street from the church, across the street, all around the corner. Now you can't even find a tent.
What's left of the site includes abandoned clothes, a walker, and a deflated air mattress under signs that read "No Encampment." The governor's office said it removed the encampments because they were a security concern ahead of the Super Bowl. Mike Steele is a spokesperson for the government's office. He said about 170 people have been moved to a modified warehouse where social workers will try to find them permanent housing.
That's why it's a transition center and not necessarily a shelter. So they want to find solutions for this group and help them take that step.
Unity for Greater New Orleans said the forced closure of the encampments was not a good model for addressing homelessness, but added that given the recent bitter cold weather and snow, the relocations likely saved lives. For the Gulf States Newsroom, I'm Stephan Bisaha.
Around 600 nurses at University Medical Center in New Orleans are set to strike for 2 days, beginning February 5th, the week of the Super Bowl. This marks their second strike as they push for a first union contract with the hospital. The Gulf States Newsroom's Drew Hawkins has more.
The nurses say hospital management has stalled negotiations and engaged in union-busting tactics. Haley Dupree is part of the nursing union at UMC. She says staffing and preparedness was a challenge while treating victims of the New Year's Day attack on Bourbon Street.
Then I'm hearing from nurses who worked that day who didn't get a break at all. They barely had time to drink water. They, just didn't have the staff to support the needs that day.
The nurses chose the week of the Super Bowl to garner more attention. UMC administrators have denied the nurses' claims that the hospital was unprepared to handle the mass casualty event, calling them false and dangerous. And they've hired contract nurses to help minimize the strike's impact on patients. For the Gulf States Newsroom, I'm Drew Hawkins.
And now it's time for Gulf States Gems, a series that shines a light on some of the treasures of the region. I actually thought of the gem for this episode, and it's the McWane Science Center in Birmingham, Alabama. The McWane Science Center is this interactive science museum that's full of educational activities and games for kids. The center has exhibits dedicated to fossils, an IMAX theater, and even an aquarium. Growing up in Birmingham, I spent many field trips going to the McWane Science Center. I remember being there while other schools were there and befriending different kids for the day, or my parents walking around with me while I played different games and then occasionally playing with me. These are memories I wouldn't have if it wasn't for a place like the McWane Science Center. You can see pictures of Gulf States gems from across the region on our Instagram, and we want to hear about a place you consider a gem. It can be a restaurant.
So looking in downtown Laurel, we found Pearl's Diner. And they say diner, but really it's best described as a meet and three.
The wine bar, which has a great story of several friends who created the space years ago in an old house, is a total New Orleans gem.
Or a bookstore, or a natural park.
Red Bluff is often referred to as the Grand Canyon of Mississippi, and the old highway that it's formed from caved in decades ago, revealing the most astonishing clay underneath.
Send us your suggestion. Email at connect@gulfstatesnewsroom.org. This week's Gulf States Gumbo was produced by me, Joseph King. Our head chef this week is Tyler Pratt. Our theme music is by DJ Supreme. Special thanks to our partner stations, WBHM, Mississippi Public Broadcasting, WWNO, and WRKF. You can find us on your podcast feeds every Friday. Look us up and be sure to subscribe. Thanks for listening, and don't forget to steal your room.